Hello there, and welcome to today's video, everyone. I am the Archangel, and basically today's video is just going to be catching up on the highlights of the Icarus Beta 2 weekend. If you want to catch most of the action, you can head over to my Twitch channel, which has about, I think it's 3 or 4 streams that I did over this past weekend. So you can just head over there and watch those. But otherwise, I'm just going to be going over all the main highlights from the previous weekend. The first main one, all the different weather events. So I mean, they did say that they're going to introduce a lot of storms in this beta weekend, and I mean, they definitely weren't kidding about that. But it wasn't just really storms, they basically changed the whole weather system or weather event system. So now, not instead of just having a storm, you get different types and varieties of storms or weather events. Things ranging from light rains to heavy winds that end up damaging your wooden structures, to thunderstorms, and last, the blast storms. These things, especially with the lightning, look absolutely spectacular. The way the events occur, where they have increased severity and where they're not so bad, and then also leading to lightning strikes, hitting trees, hitting buildings, setting things on fire. I mean, this leads to things like mass forest fires that happened, and more than multiple spots, and I think the way that it's spread throughout the forest as well is great. And I mean, the way they have it laid out is just that all the different events occur. I would imagine it's all random, so you can never really expect what kind of event's gonna happen next and how to prepare for it. But I think having a whole variety of like this just keeps the person guessing, especially if you're going out adventuring. You never know what's gonna happen and what kind of place you are going to need to keep yourself sheltered for the duration of the storm, depending on the severity of it. So I think that was something that was really interesting and fun to experience throughout the whole previous playthrough. I think just a side note of that is that some of the best structures you can get to is you want to get the stone buildings basically as quick as you possibly can. They take next to no damage from the storms or from the rains or from the winds. But if you do have the initial buildings, just the normal wood ones, then you're definitely going to have to do a lot of repairing during these storms. So I would recommend trying to push towards that as quickly as possible. Another thing is if you want to hide out during the caves when there's storm hits. I mean, sometimes it's the only option you have. You're running around trying to find resources, storm comes out from out of nowhere, all you have is a cave. I think you need to be aware of is that going into a cave, as great as it might be getting out of the storm, might give you some more debuffs or more hindrances than you might expect. And that leads on to the second highlight. The addition or the sense of a lot more buffs and debuffs occurring throughout the gameplay. The main thing is the buffs coming initially from drinking your potions or your pastes, or the different medicines that you have, the different types of foods and the types of buffs they give you. And they've introduced a few more different food types of meat you can get. You get some prime meat sometimes, so it's really great seeing how these different types of foods increase the types of buffs that you get. And then trying to make sure you don't overstack them, because you're only allowed a certain number of buffs from food and from your medicines, so it's making certain that those things that you aren't wasting food in the process and not getting the buffs from the things that you do want to get them from. Also, thing to look out for is the debuffs. One of the big ones that came out of the blue for us when we were playing is if you're in a cave for too long, you're basically going to get some pneumonia from that, and the pneumonia lasts long, and it basically tanks down your stamina bar so much that you struggle to even do the simplest of tasks. There's also a variety of different debuffs going from wounds, from being attacked from bears or wolves, if they aren't treated, leading to infections, different methods of treating these, concussions, broken bones from falls or falling off a mountain. You also get the weather debuffs, and even you can get poisoned from the piranhas when going fishing. So I think this comes down to just what the additions of the environment and the damage effects that the HUD also had in this. So basically, if you have a debuff, for example, you're poisoned, on the HUD you'll basically see yourself taking damage with a little highlight around the screen. And this is not just for when you're poisoned, especially if you want to do things like if you're going into the Arctic regions, you'll see your screen start to freeze up, or if you go towards the forest fires trying to hit them out with a whacker, if you're as smart as we are and you try something stupid like that, basically your whole screen will go blurry red, and you'll see that the whole temperature change at the bottom is what's implementing this whole change on the HUD system, which is very, very great. The next highlight, or not so much a highlight, but something very interesting that we found throughout the gameplay, is the different levels between the zones on the map. And we mean levels in terms of levels of the animals. And this is the clearest to be seen when you move between the different areas. We're not exactly sure about moving between, for example, the forest to the Arctic and desert regions yet, but within the forest itself, there are regions where you get animals ranging from low levels, levels 10, 9, you move up the hill somewhere, they move up to 60, you move further on, they're over level 100. So it's very important to keep an eye out when you're playing as to what level, sort of region you're moving into. So you then know whether you're sort of pushing too far into a level where you're going to struggle to face off against a wolf or a bear, and whether hunting is going to be easy or not for you, especially up against level 100 deers. It takes a long time just to get those down with the very basic tools in the beginning. So it's something to definitely keep an eye out. I think for me especially, it's also going to be interesting to see if these areas, even especially if they occur at the boundaries between the different biomes, like the desert or the Arctic, or also if it's going to be balanced in a way that these higher leveled areas with the higher level animals also have fewer resources that you can have available to you as well. So that's something probably going to see a bit later on throughout the next beta weekends. Another highlight is, well, the bears are freaking brutal. I'm sure that most of you have seen that there's lots of stuff going around with bear attacks, and this is especially if you are in a high level area. You're going to need all the luck you're going to get. From what I've experienced, they hit pretty lag hard, especially if you're going up about a level 40, 50 bear. They can basically tank, I think it takes about 3 hits to get you down. So you're going to have to try and use your sneak attacks and run away or find a way to take out these bears, especially if you want to move up into the higher tier regions. And also one thing to look out for is that they give a lot of the worst debuffs, especially if you don't have suture kits leading to infections. You need all of those different types of medicines just to try and keep up in the area. The one thing I was glad for is that the devs produced a hotfix, reducing the spawn rate of the bears. I think having a bit of an overpopulation of the bears around would have definitely hindered a lot of progress. Just also on a note, especially if you die and you aren't being able to revive from a friend of yours, you will respawn with a hectic XP deficit. So it basically chunks you right down to the beginning of your level, no matter how far in you went. So you definitely don't want to go up against a too high level bear and get beaten. The next highlight was the venturing off into 2 different biomes. Now I know towards the end of the beta weekend they sort of let you a little bit more access into the Arctic or frozen region just to try and get access to the ice for the refrigerator. But I think one of the other ones was the desert that we stumbled into. Now obviously this area was off limits, but you got a little sneak peek into the different types of animals they're going to be adding into the biome, as well as the different types of trees. I'm assuming they give the same resources, but I think just the aesthetic change, the way the creatures look and the different types of trees, it's very, very, very well done. And well, I'm assuming next time in the Arctic we're going to be finding ourselves some of the polar bears, and I think we might wish we had some of the normal bears after that. Then the last highlight. Basically you need to be very smart with your picks when you're leveling up. You need to pick and choose your perks and the talents very, very carefully, especially playing alone, but especially even more if you're playing with a group of others. One of the main things I found was that I took too many building things later on, which then impacted, especially when I reached level 20 and pushing for 25, it impacts on the different types of building materials you want to go for. The trick I would say is go first for the wood building materials, leave the interior stuff alone, and then push for stone as quickly as you possibly can. That'll just help you out so much in the long run, and then you can then just progress your building materials from there. The same comes from if you're choosing a skill tree in combat or resources, rather just focus on one specifically that you need in the beginning than spreading yourself out too thin. And basically, just to end off, I think this weekend was a lot better than the first one. I know in my previous video there were quite a few things I said that the game needed to improve on, and boy have they delivered this weekend. We played a lot more, there were a lot less issues, a lot less bugs. They produced hot fixes throughout the weekend, which was absolutely excellent on their half. Just producing things throughout, having players interacting a bit more with the environment. Even just small little changes can make so much difference in the game. I mean, they had the great platform with the game looking absolutely beautiful as they do now. So now it's just building on the small little improvements that they can, and making sure the game runs smoothly and that their game is trying to be as balanced as it possibly can. Now there are still a few bugs and things to be fixed, but that's the way it's gonna be with the beta weekends, especially with not having all the areas accessible yet. I mean, I got flung up into space from a carcass at some point. It was a lovely experience. But I mean, it's definitely few and far between compared to the first beta weekend. So my friend and I, we're definitely looking forward to coming up to the next one for the Arctic and doing the explorations there. And I hope to see you all there too. Please, like I said, head across to the Twitch channel if you want to have a look and see the different stages we went through. You can see the mistakes that I made. You can see lots of death by bears, 100%. But you'll also see how we worked through the different storms, the building materials used, how much resource farming you need to do, and all of the other fun stuff. As always, I hope you all stay safe out there and enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you all